Hi, my name is Kai Armstrong. I'm the product manager for the editor group in the create stage of the DevOps lifecycle at GitLab, and I want to talk about a new feature that we've got coming out in GitLab 13.4, which releases tomorrow. So I'm going to share my screen. We'll go through a couple of things of how we got here and what we've got, and then I'll demo off the new feature. So let me share this one. So in GitLab 13.2, we released real-time feedback for the GitLab CI YAML file in the web IDE. And so that is based on a JSON schema file that defines sort of the properties and fields that the GitLab CI file should have. And then there's feedback that pops up in the form of these squiggly lines down underneath that show you that something's wrong, and then a message that pops up that tells you sort of what's missing or what you need to do to fix that. So we thought about that feature and we're like, that's great. This is really good for file types that are widely used either in GitLab or sort of in other places that Schema Store might present, or there might be other things that are in Schema Store that you want to use. So instead of extending those one by one, we thought we should extend this, just allow you to sort of define what you want. And then we'll continue to define sort of in the base level what we think is important, particularly for editing GitLab. So in 13.4, we're introducing support for custom JSON schema validation. And so this allows you to define inside of the GitLab -web IDE YAML file in your project to define a custom schema. And you can reference your schema file and then what files that needs to match. And then when you open the web IDE, you'll get that feedback. And so let me just show you. This is the GitLab repo. This is where we do release posts. And so as a sort of proof point for this, James Ramsey, who's another product manager here, defined the schema for release post items. So let me open up a couple files. We'll show you the schema too. So inside of this project, he's defined a schema, and he wrote the schema file. It tells you what fields are required, sort of what the description is, what values are acceptable in the case of where there are values that need to be specified. And it goes through, and it's a fairly lengthy file. These are sort of complicated to write, but maybe we'll be able to produce some documentation in the future that helps you. You can read more about sort of these on jasonschema.org and try and understand what these are when you're writing a custom one. But this is a custom one that's in our project for the release post. Now, if I go to this file, what I see is this is the .gitlab-web IDE YAML file. This is inside the project. It's inside the project, but you'll notice we're having to reference this file based on the full raw URL. So we don't support relative linking. So you've got to supply us this file. I would say the other caveat there is that means it needs to be a publicly available file. If you were doing this in a private project, this may not work as expected. You'd need your schema file sort of publicly available at a URL that it can be completely referenced. Once we've done that, we define what file types it needs to match against. So in this case, we're matching against the release post unreleased YAML files that all product managers use when they go and draft a release post item. And that's how we build out our big giant release post. So we've defined the schema. We've got that definition matched in here. So we could add other ones if we had other things that we wanted to do. And then we'll go to a release post item. So this is a release post item that I'm working on for 13.5. You can see it here now, sneak peek, but this is all of the fields that we define when we go through and do this. And you'll notice that I've already got a squiggly line. I sort of went and was messing with this to make sure I could generate the proper errors. And just starting here where it says available in, if I hover over it, it says tiers the features and available in. And so for features on only GitLab.com, it can be free, bronze, silver, or gold can be used, and it's a required field. So I get all this information about what's required for this field. And then when I click here, because there's these squiggly lines, I know there's an issue. I click on it and it says the value is not accepted. Valid values are core, starter, premium, ultimate, free, bronze, silver, and gold. Well, that's good because I can now see, oh, I must have just misspelled that, which is really helpful. And this is consistent sort of throughout. So if I were to like maybe misspell this one, let me get rid of this. It's now going to tell me that like it can't read it. So this is some YAML validation. We'll see what we can do here. Stage, we still don't know what that is. And now we're expecting a string. So we at least get a little bit of help there. And all of this is based on our schema. So the more we define in our schema, the better those errors can be and the more we can learn about them. So if I look here, stage, all we say is it's got to be a string. We're not matching sort of the expected stages in here, although we could, similarly to how we do, we say available in, and we've defined in the schema what that looks like. We could also define in here what the valid pieces for a stage are. So we'll continue to iterate on our own schema, but I really wanted to show off how now with custom schema, if you've got a file type that is something consistent that you use on a regular basis that users would benefit from having that additional validation. So something like maybe a blog post or a front matter template for a static site or other things like that, where you could define key fields that are required for your YAML. Then you could draft a schema, and then you could have that in here. And that way the web IDE can help those users write that file. And so we're really excited about introducing this, not only for our own workflow in the release post, but to see what our users do with it. So this is launching in 13.4. So check it out. Let us know what you think. And thanks.